Hello there and welcome to the Method Matters Show, Beers in a Balcony. I'm your podcast host, Greg Kouwiloyan, co-founder and director for the Finance and Corporate Services Division for Method Recruitment. This show is purely centered around thought leaders in Australia and learning more about their inspirational stories, both from past, present and the future. And I am very fortunate to be sharing a beer or a cup of tea or a nice bottle of water with Dean Glasscock, the head of business performance management at CitiPower, Powercor and United Energy. Dean, how are you, pal?
Good. Thanks for having me on board. And it's great, and it's a privilege to have a glass of water in a closet.
It won't always be like this, Dean. Bear with it. No, good stuff, mate. We're super happy and really glad that you decided to join us. And for those of you who don't know who Dean is, as mentioned, Dean heads up the business performance management function for 3 of Victoria's electricity distribution businesses, being CitiPower, Powercor and United Energy. Dean's main role is to primarily drive the financial strategy for the business, which he does via the budget and the planning process, business partnering and performance reporting, as well as driving value in his role as chair for a number of internal investment committees. He's obviously a very busy guy, Dean. And through his time at CitiPower, Powercor and United Energy, Dean and his team have been instrumental in delivering about $150 million worth of transformational program for both CitiPower and Powercor. Mate, that is outstanding, as well as leading the financial acquisition and integration for United. And prior to that, Dean, a bit of insight. Dean worked in funds management and investment consulting and has a formal background in economics. And for all his sins, he's also a West Ham United supporter, but we would not, and I promise you, mate, we will not hold that against you, my friend.
Yeah, I suspect your listeners won't agree with your last statement there either.
We'll see at the end of the season, mate. Don't make me worry about it. No, Dean, thank you again, matey. So I think we will just launch straight into it, my friend. As we mentioned, the podcast is more geared towards learning some insights, hearing about your journey, your story, and of course, what is to come. So I've got a series of carefully crafted questions, and I'll be really keen for you to give us your honest insight. But we're going to rewind the clock now, Dean. Rewind the clock. So digging deep into your past, if you were to rewind time and speak to your 18-year-old self, what would be the single piece of advice you would give?
Yeah, it's a good question, Greg. I'll just stick to things from a career perspective, not a life choices perspective, because I suspect there's a few good things I could have given myself back when I was 18 years old. But from a career perspective, I think the biggest thing I've got out of my journey to date is keeping an open mind. Ultimately, the marketplace is a small marketplace, and where you envisage yourself to be back when you're 18 and where you end up, not necessarily the same place. Keeping an open mind only opens more doors to yourself and your career. As background in economics, didn't expect to be working in a regulated utility, managing 20 management accountants. But love what I do as a role, and it's only by keeping an open mind and really jumping on what opportunities sort of come to the fold that I've been able to get to where I am today. So that's probably the key piece of advice I would have given myself. Mm-hmm. But lending off that, just being aware that you never stop learning. I think when you're 18, you're probably pretty structured in where you think you want to go and how you're going to achieve that. So you finish your high school diploma, and your next steps, eventually university, where you're looking to get a bachelor degree in some form of commerce or the like. That's not the end of your learning journey. That's ultimately just a certificate or license you get to start learning. And that's something, back when I was 18, would never have had an idea of the amount of learning that I've done after receiving my my economic degree. Has been vast beyond what I actually achieved through the 3 years of doing my bachelor's.
Man, that's great, mate. Thanks for being honest there. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I cast my mind back to when I was 18, no idea. I think I jumped around from wanting to be a health professional in the pediatrics world to wanting to do international business and finance. It was like complete apples and pears, opposite ends of the career spectrum, both equally rewarding though. But you are right about that learning journey as well. And even more recently, you just don't stop, you just soak things in, but you have to kind of want it. You can easily sit back and do what you want to do and, manage that status quo. But if you're hungry, got the appetite for it, why should it stop?
That's right. Yeah. And ultimately, if you like what you're doing and you have that open mind, you're always going to end up progressing really well in your career.
I couldn't agree.
Because you're going to flourish and you're going to enjoy doing what you're doing. A career is not something that you just do 9 to 5 and do for a little bit of coin. A career is really a large part of your life, and you really need to enjoy it to get the most out of your life.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, mate. Couldn't agree more. Thank you, mate. Very, very honest there, mate. I do appreciate that. Looking at your career to date, and obviously I've known you for a while, so if I look at your sort of, if I also assess what you've achieved and where you've pretty much added value, it seems like you've achieved a great deal in a very short period, especially when you mentioned about the acquisition piece. That's an exciting piece of work. When it comes down to probably what you're most proud of to date professionally, is there one piece that you think, you know what, I was glad to be a part of that, or I was glad to drive that?
You've sort of touched on it. So there's a lot of projects and things that I've put in place within the organisation that I'm really proud of to date. But the key thing, the main one, if you're to hold me to one, that I'm proud of and probably got the most learning out of as well. So leaning back on the first question is the acquisition of United Energy. So that the context of the listeners was one of the largest transactions in the Australian marketplace back in 2017. Our majority shareholders, CKI, purchased the Duet Infrastructure Group. So that was a $9.4 billion transaction. And I was heavily involved in the process leading up to the transaction. So creating the value, understanding the different components of the Duet Infrastructure Group, working with the shareholders to really figure out where synergies may lie, where the business could be restructured to provide better outcomes to the shareholders and also the end consumers. So the Duet Infrastructure Group, it's a utility group serving mums and dads. The better we can provide a service to the mums and dads, the cheaper we can provide a service to the mums and dads, the better a social outcome it is for the whole of the community, just outside of the shareholders. So a lot of work involved there, and I've done that before. my history prior to being in this organisation has been in the M&A space. So I've done a lot of transaction work, really enjoyable stuff. You learn a lot. You have to work long hours over a short period of time. But through that journey, you do get to understand all the facets of a company. And look at it from different angles and deal with various stakeholders. Did that. I've done that before. Mm-hmm. What I haven't done is implement it. Mm-hmm. So it's in the past I've bought a lot of assets and fed them into the portfolio, and we sort of managed it off to the side. But this acquisition had a lot of strong assumptions built into it, which needed to be delivered. And the way it was going to be operated was the management of the Duet Infrastructure Group was going to be managed by the people that were actually putting the bid in place. So we're on the hook to deliver the outcomes, and realising the synergies that were baked into the model, and delivering on those, bringing United Energy into the fold is a massive transformational piece, and it does really stretch your leadership and communication skills, as well as just being aware of all the various risks involved with delivering just day-to-day outcomes. If you're jumping into a new car and you don't know how to start the engine, that's probably what I'd liken it to when you get the keys to a new company. That was a massive learning opportunity for me, and pull a few grey hairs out through the process. But yeah, in terms of building up my leadership capabilities, it was probably the biggest piece that I've had to date.
That's an interesting project, to say the least. I can only imagine the ambiguity that you had to navigate, and probably the hands that you had to hold as well. But like you said, it must have been a great, fairly steep learning curve.
Yeah, and for anyone who's sort of really looking for opportunities, throwing your hand up in the air and trying to grab as much as you can. These things don't come up too often, but if they do come up, I recommend you do put your hand up, because the amount of learnings you get out of that is far and beyond anything you'd get out of a textbook.
I couldn't agree more, mate. Anything that's practical, where you can get your hands a little bit dirty and learn from the best, is obviously going to be far greater. Don't get me wrong, there's obviously a space for textbook learning, but that coupled with the practical, hopefully you'll be a stronger operator afterwards.
That's right.
No, mate, thank you for that. And you did actually touch a little bit on my third question around that leadership component. Obviously you're managing a fairly large team, and obviously a team that's more geared towards building commercial value for a number of different entities. And nowadays, obviously, people are always excited by the prospects of being able to help enable or influence key decisions. If you were to give some advice to someone that was keen to break into that sort of leadership space, what knowledge would you impart them?
I'll answer this twofold. First, how to actually get into the leadership space, which I suspect your listeners would be interested to hear, but also what to do once you've got the good gig. Really, when it comes to your career and you feel like you're in a position to break into a leadership role, it's a given that your fundamentals are good. So naturally, how do you break into that role? You need to create visibility, and it's a lot easier said than done. But to be blunt about it, how people actually get measured is about how they're seen. You know, you can have a really good performer who's great at sitting behind the desk and throwing out reports, but if they're not present and in front of the right people at the right time and creating that awareness within the business, their opportunities of going that next step they are somewhat limited. So it's creating as many opportunities as you can to get in front of the right people and promote your own brand. And that is quite a stretch, especially if you're used to being in the analytical space, receiving a lot of information and corresponding, as everyone does at the moment, via emails and not via the phone. It's a change of mentality and tact. So that'd be my big piece of advice. And you know, it's a piece of advice I run with myself when it comes to just promoting my own brand and my own team within the current company that I'm in, but also the wares outside of the company. And you see it from all good, great leaders. The ones that are right at the top of the pyramid, they're the ones that can really communicate well and promote what they're doing to the wider audience. Key tip once in a senior role, and it is sort of linked to the first part of my response: being comfortable with the unknown and being comfortable to step away from the detail. So I manage a team of 23, and we look after the whole of the organisation. So we've got a good $9 billion asset base that we manage, and we also manage an unregulated business. I can't be close to the detail on everything that the team does, but you know, comfortable that I've got a really good team underneath me, and comfortable that I can ask the right questions with the team, and manage the team appropriately to get to the right solution. It is a massive step for anyone jumping into a senior role. Naturally, you're comfortable doing, not necessarily getting someone else to do what you know you could do probably better. Nice. And now you throw me any piece of work, a spreadsheet to do a valuation on a company, and because I've been away from it for quite a while, I'm comfortable the people underneath me can do it a lot better.
Very honest.
Yeah, I'm comfortable I can ask the right questions and I know what the outcomes are without actually getting into the spreadsheets and doing the detail. And that's, you know, that's where you really sell yourself as a proper leader, enabling your group and being able to ask and drive the right questions and behaviours.
I think you make a very, very valid point, sort of being close enough to the detail so you can ask the right questions, but also as well having that trust in your team that obviously you're cultivating a high-performing culture, that, you know, if things do go awry or things need to be fixed, then that person, wherever he or she may be, can knuckle down and get it done, and then maybe come to you when or if they need to. Like there's some sort of fire that needs putting out. Dean, can you help, please? We've all been there. But if there's one thing that I've learned pretty much about leadership, it's very similar to what you mentioned. It's about that everyone is different and everyone has different ways of learning and being coached. And some of the best leaders that I've worked under and had the opportunity to partner with are the ones that can switch swords between two different personality types or learning types, because you could have someone who's maybe more advancing their career, who doesn't need to have their hand held, of someone that's maybe just breaking in to that space, who need to be shown the fundamentals and having the tact to do one and then jump into the coal face and do the other. Sometimes I've seen people struggle with that because of that uniformed way of training.
Yeah, that's having that open awareness of who you're talking to and what they need.
Yeah.
And that's not limited to managing a team.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's really true. I think you made a great point. Thank you, mate. There's a lot we can take from that response, so I do appreciate it. Obviously, there's a big, especially in the sort of finance and accounting space in Melbourne or Australia alone in the past 10 years, there's been a lot of topical trends, whether it's the utilization of data, whether it's the business partnering functions that are being built to help create the right decisions, or the influence of shared services to build better costing models, onshoring, offshoring. It's, there's still a whole plethora of change that I'm sure that lie ahead, but obviously technology can't be overlooked. And I was going to ask a bit more about the tech space for the 3 entities that you look after. How would you say that technology and systems have shaped the organization over the past, let's say, 2 or 3 years?
There's been a massive change in the past 2 years. I'd probably say the past 5 years within the organization. When I came into the organization, it was a very different place than what it is today. I wasn't even given a mobile phone, which sometimes good, right? It's nice to go home without anyone calling you or any access to emails. But the biggest change that we've seen in the past 2 years, and it's not limited to our business, is connectivity. So prior to the COVID outbreak, we didn't have Microsoft Teams. We didn't use Zoom chats. The ability to use that has just been fantastic. Being able to connect with various parts of the organisation throughout the state at a whim and have that, facial conversation rather than, shooting an email or a text. It's been really valuable, and I do see, the utilisation of that and all the add-ons that come with that in the future to be utilised even when people start moving back into the office. It has been a great win for the company. But outside that, if I want to talk about data and finance, we've got really solid systems. We use SAP when it comes to our finances and our operations business. But we also have a bunch of other layers and applications that we throw on top of that. And some of the real good smarts that we're getting now is really on the operational side of things. We can get data a lot quicker and understand what's actually happening in the field, what's happening in the marketplace, what's happening to our assets on a 5-minute basis that we wouldn't have been able to do before. And being able to condense that information and report it correctly is a skill in its own right, but it does add valuable insights. It can, for some people, be very, very intimidating because you throw more data, you just throw more noise. The challenge for big data is really being able to decipher and tell stories about what you receive. So I think, that's a massive win for us, and in terms of finance of the future, you're going to just see a lot more of that. You can talk to the financials day in, day out, But if you don't have a grasp on what's actually happening within the company from an operational perspective, you're really missing the key value driver. So the more operational metrics we can throw into how we report and interact with the company, the better.
Yeah. I think you made a valid point there, a really valid point about what value can you continuously bring. I kind of get a little bit freaked out by the words back office and back office support and how finance is back office. I mean, it's so old hat, and I still, to this day, speak to finance leaders who refer to their team as back office, and I hate it, mate. I hate it, and I know that it can be obviously, I have to admit, not a revenue generating role in 15 years in recruitment. I'm not naive to think that, but the reality is you need to be adding value and looking at new ways of adding value. So I think what you mentioned definitely resonates.
It's a mentality thing, and you see organisations that are happy to be where they're at, and if they do coin themselves as a back office finance function, that they'll be compliant in doing what they're doing, but they won't be progressing and really challenging the norm. So it is an interesting point you raise. I have heard it myself, and I have heard it myself within the organisation, which I'm very happy to get on the front foot and tell them what I think. Because ultimately, the finance function's an enabler. It's an enabler for growth, and it's an enabler for portraying data to key stakeholders that can make real valuable decisions. And that's how I see my function within the organisation. So the more data we can get from an operational perspective, and the more we can drive the right behaviours when linking the financials to the operational data, the better it will be for all involved.
I couldn't agree more, mate. Yeah, I do balk at the thought of people saying back office. It's like, no, okay, this is not 1994. All right, you can't say that. All right, let's focus on what value what value your teams can bring. That's brilliant. Technology
is a massive thing in our industry. It might not have been in the past, but we're seeing massive changes in technology. A good little story is take you back probably 8 years ago. Our largest spend is vegetation management, so ensuring that trees don't overgrow areas around our poles and wires. So we do have significant amount of infrastructure in high bushfire risk areas, and the last we'd like to see is any bushfires or sparks created from our assets. So large focus on that. And in the past, how did we go about measuring and understanding what trees need to be cut and when? We'd have people walk around with binoculars. And to give you a bit of context to the area we look at the CBD down to the Mornington Peninsula, and then all the way out west to Mildura and Warrnambool.
Wow,
that's a lot of walking with binoculars. And it's only been recently that we've had the technology available to us that we can, and it's driven by us as well, that we can put some smarts in place, and we can have helicopters flying our networks with LiDAR solutions, so it's lasers that pinpoint where the foliage is next to our assets, and we can properly map things, and then we can get our data analytics guys to put in place growth models so we can predict what needs to be cut when, and we've got that reliable source of data. So it's a very changing place, and I can just see it evolving year on year.
Yeah. That's brilliant, mate. So obviously the technology is reducing the man hours that are being spent walking around that geographical space, which is obviously it's a lot of walking. It's a lot of trainers.
That's right. It's a lot of sunscreen as well. But it's also a greater understanding of what we're managing. So technology can provide you some really useful stuff.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, mate. And it's ever changing. And it's actually quite good to see that there's a lot of organizations that are grasping onto technology, especially the things that are available. Like I cast my mind back 2 or 3 years, how we were doing interviews face to face, and the utilization of now obviously Microsoft and Teams or OneDrive. I honestly do not know what I would do without it. My life would be so much harder.
Oh yeah, sharing information is so much easier these days.
Brilliant, mate. Thank you for that, and I like the story there as well. Wellness on the tip of everyone's tongue, especially over the past couple of years as we've been going for a pretty prickly time. Can be relatively hard to measure, but I do know the focus points in most organizational cultures tends to be around the well-being and the mindfulness of their employees. In terms of the organization and maybe what's been put in place, how are you and your peers and leaders sort of combating the issue, but also supporting mental health in the workplace?
We're probably lucky as an organisation that we operate in a space that has a real strong emphasis on health and safety. So it's been our number one priority since I joined, or since day dot, really. The focus from the corporate perspective, some might liken it to a back office perspective, has always been on mental health, because that's something that you can really focus on anyone. Everyone has their bad days, and it's the impact of mental health is far more costly to an organisation than someone tripping down a stairwell within an office block. So it has been on the forefront for a really long time within the organisation. But I guess the elephant in the room is the impacts of remote working and what that's actually had on the team. And I suspect you've got even better stories about this, dealing with a lot of people out in the marketplace at the moment that are a bit burnt out, sitting around at home. But we're really well aware that having teams in various pockets, sitting at home, trying to manage their families, their jobs, and not really having any social connections with anyone is a real pinch point at the moment. So how do we manage that? We've put in place a lot of different forums where we can get more connections within the company. So there's a few initiatives that have been taken place from a broader company perspective, but also from my team's perspective. We've got a novel thing called Coffee Roulette, where you just allocated a random person to speak to for half an hour a month. And there's a lot of value out of that. You're meeting brand new people, you're learning more about the company, but you're also just sitting back and having a relaxed conversation with someone which is quite novel, right? Everyone at the moment is just head down, bum up, dealing with the mass inflow of work, and lack of communication forums. They just haven't been able to step back and have those relaxed conversations. So that's been a really good win for the organisation, I feel. And then from my team's perspective, we just make sure that we have times where we step back and have a little bit of fun. So every Friday afternoon, we've set around an hour to do a trivia or have a few drinks over Teams. And it's a good opportunity for people just to let their guard down and relax a little bit, and sets them in a good place for the weekend.
Isn't it important?
But yeah, communication's the biggest thing. It's what's really been lacking over the past 2 years. Even just picking up the phone and having a chat with someone, making time in your day to ask them how they're going. It's quite simple and easy to do, but we all just get caught up and forget about it. But having those little prompters like "Are you okay?" day does make you think, well, geez, probably should do that a little bit more often.
It's true. We should have an "Are you okay?" day at least 5 days a week. Just to double check. Are you sure you're doing all right?
Yeah, that's right.
We spoke about this yesterday, but is everything A-okay?
That's right. That's right. It's a good point. Like when I get on the phone, I don't jump into work straight away. Check in, see what's happening in someone's life, and have that discussion before even talking about work, because you just don't know what's happening with people. If someone's got 3 kids that they're trying to manage homeschooling and do work at the same time, sometimes it's nice for them to have someone to vent to.
That quick conversation turned into a 45-minute Teams chat. It's like, hold on a second, what happened there?
That's why we talk so long, Greg.
Yeah. Oh God, it's so true, mate. It's so true. But my personal experience when we kind of went into this debacle early part of last year was over communication, because people wanted to kind of show that they were busy and they were working, and I trust my team and my peers implicitly, and we put a very outcome focused environment, so it's hard to hide as such. But there was over communication, so there was wellness meetings, and then we had our one-to-one catch-ups, and then we had our stand-ups, we had our Monday kickoffs and our Friday wrap-ups. It was just like, whoa, everyone's in maybe 10 to 15 meetings a week. There's absolutely no time to get anything done.
You're not the only one that's dealt with that. We were the same when it kicked off last year. So we'd have a group meeting here, then we'd have subgroup meetings. Been going on for quite a while now. We've managed to get that healthy median where we've got a good balance of relaxed communication, but people still have time to sit down and actually do work as well.
Equally important as attend a leadership meeting. I get that.
But you can. It's a balance also when people are back in the office. You can have death by meetings, and people always feel like they need to set up meetings. But generally, things can be solved really quickly with a quick 5-minute conversation, and it gives you an extra 25 minutes in the day, right?
Yeah. And that 25 minutes could be absolutely golden. So I couldn't agree more, mate. Oh, some good points there, mate. Thank you. Dean, that kind of wraps up our conversation. I've got a bit of a smoky question to throw your way, actually, because we're not actually in a pub, although we're not having beers in a balcony, but I do have a can of gold.
Oh, you've got a beer.
I have got a beer.
Cheeky.
I know, and I'm not going to drink it without you. Now I don't drink alone. That's my
Yeah.
solemn rule.
Do the listeners know it's before midday?
Yes. But on a parting note, mate, when we do get into a pub, what drink am I going to be buying you, mate? What will be the first rounds? What will be the go-to when the world comes alive?
Oh, that's definitely a beer.
Yeah.
A nice cold pint.
Yeah.
And then another.
And then another. Just line them up.
I've missed having a nice cold pint at a pub, and I'm definitely looking forward to that invitation.
Oh, mate, you and I both. Let's just navigate this storm.
Yeah, the weather's made for it. Like, today's a beautiful day to sit out at a pub, and this is when Melbourne really becomes alive, doesn't it? You know, spring carnival. They start putting all these little bars on the river.
Can't wait.
Yeah, we're in a great place now. That things are turning around. The sun's shining, and the pubs are opening. Life is good.
We sound so fickle. Are we that simple? It's just like, yeah, give me freedom, give me beer, give me sunshine. That's it. Easily pleased.
Everyone's simple.
Oh, mate. Dean, I cannot thank you enough for your time, mate. It's been such a pleasure, and I appreciate you going into a lot of depth around some of those quite probing of questions, mate. But yeah, that pretty much wraps everything up. So thank you so much for your time, mate.
Right. Thanks, Greg.